You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and to push our conversation on the topic, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, let's take this background report by Timothy Yusuf.
The Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026 has sparked intense debate in Nigeria, particularly regarding the rejection of mandatory electronic transmission of election results. The Senate voted against this provision, which has been advocated for by civil society groups and opposition parties to enhance transparency and reduce electoral malpractice. Critics argue that this decision undermines the integrity of the electoral process and could lead to manipulation of results.
This decision directly contradicts the position of the House of Representatives, which explicitly approved mandatory real-time transmission during the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill.
The important thing is implementation, when we get to the implementation. And the important thing also is clarity of the law. You know, INEC has done quite a lot in terms of improving the process by way of bringing in the technological advancements, you know, like beavers, IRF, and all these things.
Senator Godswill Akpabio, the president of the Senate, defended the decision, stating that electronic transmission was not abolished, but rather the current law already allows it at INEC's discretion.
And we do it painstakingly, taking our time to ensure that what comes out reflects the yearnings and aspirations of all Nigerians. And also to be sure that the next election, all questions connected with the next election will be answered by the amendments.
Other contentious issues include reduced election timelines, voter identification, and penalties for electoral offenses. The controversy has sparked protests and calls for the National Assembly to reconsider the amendments. The bill now moves to a conference committee for harmonization with the House of Representatives version. For more about the implications of these amendments or the reactions of various stakeholders, over now to our guest in the studio.
All right, many thanks, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. And to begin our conversation on the Electoral Reform or Act Amendment Bill, let me welcome here in the studio Ezenwa Nwago, who is Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform and the convener, Say No Campaign, Say No to Campaign Nigeria. Say No Campaign Nigeria. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much.
Let me also welcome here Faith Nwadishi, who is Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen and lady. You're all regulars here. We've been talking about this electoral bill for quite some time now. I think we spoke about it, was it late last year, before Christmas, and here we are today again. The House of Reps has passed it to the Senate to, you know, combine them together, and let's see how it comes out. Mr. Ezenwa, what do you make of all the controversy, you know, surrounding the Electoral Act bill that's going on now? You're from the CSO, and we hear that some of the CSOs are saying this is not right. There's a lot of controversy. Some are saying real-time electronic transfer of results is there. Some are saying it has been removed. Can you please sort of explain it to us, what it's all about?
Well, I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy that there is that interest in how we're governed, and there's a lot of citizen oversight around lawmaking. But my quick sense always is that, and I think I've expressed that here, is that I'm not very excited about this every legislative year you are changing your electoral act. Mm-hmm. I think there is something that is not sitting well around that. I think we should have some time to be able to test out our laws beyond one election cycle, to be able to truly get, you know, a more wider perspective around its workability, efficiency, and get to that point where we are able to know what to tinker on a long run. I've seen us solve problems only to create more problems over time. We get, if we want to scratch something, and then at some point we scratch it to the point where we now start
Draw blood.
and then we are asking ourselves, why did we even start scratching in the first instance? So for the conversation that is currently on, it's helpful, it's needed, but it is not, in my view, far-reaching. It is not far-reaching because real-time mandatory upload transmission. So my question has been, where are you transmitting to? Whether you transmit compulsorily or mandatorily, real time, to what? To a viewing portal. Now, I then ask, this viewing portal, does it have computational facility? If the form EC8A, which is handwritten, and my sister is an expert, she's an engineer, so she'll be able to, can you real time, you know, does the computer have capacity to analyze handwritten PDF? So my sense is that there should be a condition to it saying electronic transmission and collation.
Okay.
That way we situate what we are really discussing. Because if you continue to take compromised results from the polling unit and upload into a viewing portal that does not in real time compute whatever you have put on it, for me, we are reinforcing even the position of the Senate. So, but I know that there is a tinkering. A lot of people have caught into the conversation about not just staying, because it's an ask. You are pushing, you are a civil society, you are an advocacy group. You don't make law. So in your ask, you must ask in a way that shows that you truly have understanding, holistic understanding of what the crisis. Because every law, every reform must cure a malady. There is something it has to cure. If it is about integrity and transparency, then the ask is not, in my view, completely holistic. But it's a good step. And like I said in my opener, we're excited that more and more citizens are, but also my proviso is that this cannot be outsourced to civil society. I think making it a civil society conversation limits the parties, the political parties, actively, not, I'm not talking about, in quote, opposition figures. You know, Nigeria has opposition figures, not parties.
Parties.
Okay.
Oh.
I want to see the parties.
Can you explain that?
Okay, so you have a system in which there are individuals who are bigger than the party, who are not in the National Working Committee, they are not in the NEC, they are past whatever, should change from the system, and they ride on a more political plank than patriotic, altruistic need for true change. So that's the distinction for me. So I'm saying I want to see 18 political parties, IPAC, coming into the conversation with a more nuanced, engagement, so that we don't make the issue of reform look like it is the media and civil society conversation. It is not. It should be a pan-Nigerian conversation that draws all the people who are interested in pushing the frontiers and sentinels of integrity beyond where it is now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ezenwa Nwagu. Now,
okay, I hear that our guest on Zoom has joined us.
Is it ready? Yes,
Hamzat Lawan, Chevenix Scholar, Master's Student, Institute of Development Studies, University of Sussex, United Kingdom, and founder, Connected Development. It's good to see you. You're not in our studio today, you're far away, UK. It's good to see you, Hamza.
It's good to see you. It's a good morning, and thank you for having me.
Go ahead.
All right. Let me get to Faith Wadiji. Now, Ezenwa has said he's not a fan of every time, changing the laws. I also read a piece this morning by a respected communicator and scholar, Professor Tony Radia, who was talking about the amendments of the National Assembly serving only to undermine democratic reforms. Is this your feeling too?
Thank you very much. I agree completely with Ezenwa's submission, because this is what I've always said. And most times you see that these reforms come very close to the election. So in a few days' time, we'll have the FCT elections. We'll have Osun and Ekiti election coming, and we are still discussing the electoral amendment. So it's quite unfortunate that we see it has become a culture. It's like for every National Assembly, there must be a review of the Electoral Act. To what extent? You put in so much resources and time to review all of this, and you don't even get to implement 70% of the law, and you are changing it again. So, well, who does it benefit? And the sad part is that all of these electoral reforms and all of that, who does it benefit? It is the same people who are ruling, who are in the National Assembly. They are the same ones who will go through these elections and get elected into that office. They are the same ones who are attracting this. So the fundamental question you want to ask, especially for this process, is that members of the National Assembly are representatives of a people. So you want to ask, what was the reaction or the request of your people about these amendments you have made? Because it's not about you, the individual, it's about your constituency. So we heard that they went back, had town hall meetings, and consulted their constituencies, because this is a very strategic and important law that they must do. So if you had that conversation, and members of your constituencies were saying, this is what we want, is that what you are proposing? Is that what you have proposed? Or you have put in an individual law or provision in the law that concerns yourself? So this is I agree completely with what Satoni Radio has said and this. The thing really for me, like he said, is not just about transmission. It's about tweaking the system to ensure that we have real-time collation too. Because you're just transmitting the results and somebody is sitting down somewhere still writing it down. So it's like we have moved to a certain place and we need to move on. That's what reforms do. You need to move on from here, because the court have said, oh, it is not written in the language, in the act, and so you cannot hold it, you cannot bring it to the courts because it's not there in the act. Meanwhile, there is a guideline that says this is how we are going to do it. It's already there. So what stops us from adding that conversation? In fact, now that the conference is happening, we should ask that conversation should be added. Electronic transmission and collation, because for me, collation is that bullet, that silver bullet that we need to be able to do that, and it can be done because the system right now, like Eze asked, does not capture the fact that you transmit and it collates. But there is the technology. There is the technology that can take data from PDF and then send it to collation, make it an electronic document, and then you will see it. That's where we really need to go. It's quite unfortunate to say that we're at this point, and there are provisions. You know, I keep saying, since this conversation started, I said this could be a very good time to actually test the provision of recall in our constitution. Because if you are my representative and you have come to ask my opinion about a law, and I say this is how it should go, as my representative, it is not your opinion this time, it is our opinion. So if you are not proposing our opinion, there's no representation anymore there.
Well, you know, some experts, you know, political analysts out there will say, well, the voter doesn't really matter at times. It's just what they decide. Let's bring in Hamza into this conversation. Now, you've listened to Ezenwa and Madam Faith on this issue, and you are out there. And let's have your opinion on, you know, the different, you know, clauses in the amended electoral bill that is going to be passed by the Senate, and, you know, the twerking and all that is going on there. And most Nigerians are saying, why didn't we do it before getting into an electionary year where campaigns will begin? And we all know in Nigeria, when these things start, when campaign begins, everything almost stops. Let's get your opinion.
Well, first, it's better late than never. And, you know, truth be told, we've made progress in our electoral law. And, you know, the provision is clear that every legislative cycle, we always have electoral amendments. I think first is it's quite shameful and unfortunate that there is always controversy from the National Assembly, particularly from the red chambers. And I think that this is also important when our senators reflect, particularly the leadership. They must be careful on their utterances and also sensitivities of matters that affect the country. Election is one aspect that every citizen hold dear to their hearts, because this is a process where it doesn't discriminate. Everyone is entitled to one vote. And no matter how powerful you are, you also have one vote. So that being said, I think also it doesn't sit well where you hear people from the Senate say that let us allow INEC to decide. If we're going to allow institutions to decide, then why do we have the National Assembly, which is the most important arm of government? Because without the National Assembly, this would not be a democracy in Nigeria. I think that, yes, we've seen that there's some controversy around electronic transmission of results, but it is non-negotiable, because you see why citizens are calling for this to be institutionalized, particularly in this ongoing electoral amendment, is because of the experience from 2023 general elections, particularly during the tribunal up to even the Supreme Court, and the judgment of the Supreme Court, particularly around technicalities. And this is where the amendment come into place, because when it is clear and stipulated in law, not in INEC's guideline, because you see that was where the technicalities, fall short. INEC's guideline cannot supersede the Electoral Act. And there's an opportunity here to amend it. And the Nigerian people are saying, let us have electronic transmission of results. We cannot say that we're integrating technology into our electoral system and processes, and we just want to do 160. No, let's have 360. If we've integrated beavers that have helped us to checkmate our multiple voting system and also, strengthen verification of voters, let us also have, electronic transmission of results, particularly using the IREF. We can also argue that, it results in PDF, but we have machine reading database platform that could help us analyze PDF and help us collate it. We can also ask further, because this is also an amendment process, and a conference committee, have been set up, both from the House of Rep and the Senate, a joint committee. We can say, okay, we can push it further and say, probably it could become, let's call it electronic transmission and collation of results. But mind you, this is also a process. We might, as much as we want these two things, if we get one, we can compromise and then, move it to the next cycle of electoral amendment, probably after the election. So maybe the lessons will learn.
I think we've temporarily lost connection.
He's back. Okay,
Samzat back?
Go ahead.
Please conclude, round off your thoughts, please.
Most importantly, is the will of the people must always supersede the will of individuals or collective few who probably have their selfish interests. The people at the National Assembly represent constituency, and we as constituents are saying electronic transmission of result is non-negotiable.
Yes, let's use him while the network is good. I'm still going to stay with you briefly. There are a lot of ambiguities, in the electoral bill, and Nigerians are asking, who benefits from this ambiguity, voters or politicians?
It's a question to me. Who benefits from this process? Definitely the electorate, definitely voters, because again, integrating technology and electronic transmission of results strengthen the system, ensure transparency and accountability, and take away a lot of ambiguity, in the electoral process itself. So we cannot allow just INEC to decide and put it in their guideline. No, we must institutionalize it, particularly in our laws, in our electoral process, as agreed by various millions of voices we've all known that are constituent. And these are also the voters, and they truly matter. So it is the Nigerian people that will benefit, so that we don't have to spend public resources to go through, the judicial process up to the Supreme Court. If we have electronic transmission of results, people can get this data in real time. Civil society can analyze this data, and various situation rooms can collate it even before INEC.
All right, Hamzat Lawal, thank you very much. We will get back to you in the course of this conversation. But back here in the studio, let me take my questions to Ezenwa. Now, is there a wider danger when lawmakers override public preference on key democratic measures?
I will answer you in some different way, because when we use public, we are dealing with an unstatistical category. Public.
The people.
No, even when you say the people are not a homogeneous category. We respond to different kind of stimulus. Okay, if you have representatives, and like my sister said, Faith, that those representatives are truly representatives of the people. What they come out with, what somebody who is in Wukari is going to come out with, is not what somebody in the phasing it will come out with. The representative from Wukari comes with what his people say, which may not necessarily align with what somebody who has an office in Wuse too is saying. We must also be a bit careful and nuanced in how we also engage institutions in a way that hamstrung them from actually performing as an institution. In the Senate, the fact that you went to your constituents does not mean the position of your constituents will carry the day. And there is something called the power of the gavel. I listened to some people. This is just for public education. I will still come back to your question. Now, I heard somebody say what we agreed was in the report of the ad hoc committee. I was listening. A senator. But what you have in your ad hoc committee will not be what is passed when Senate goes through clause by clause. When they go through clause by clause, the leader, the Senate president, calls for votes on those clauses. When he says clause so, a senator proposes, and he says, is there a seconder? And somebody seconds. And when that person seconds, he now puts it to
votes,
the voice vote that they are doing. If you support X, Y, Z, say aye. Then you have aye, and then if you don't, say nay, and the nay.
Nay.
If you are my representative, and they say aye, and you don't agree, you can come by order. We didn't see that. We saw people saying it was in the ad hoc committee report. So the fact, if you are defeated by majority opposition, that major, and sometimes you can, the Senate president can even hear more nay and still go for aye.
That's the power of the gavel.
It's the power of the gavel. What are we practicing? Let us also be very clear that we are practicing democracy. And we are also not trying to impose what we. So having said that, that's an aside. Because in expanding the democratic mind, we must also not come to a point where we think that because we have a position, our position is the best. I cited how people come from different nuances, religious, ethnic, everything comes into lawmaking. Lawmaking is not just about, that's number one. So every time we use masses, the masses are saying, the people are saying, let us be very clear to situate what we are saying, that we are saying, and meaning that we as a category who think we understand this is what our position is. But there's a limit to advocacy.
Why?
Because you don't make the law.
Yes.
As civil society, as media, our work is to supply all the information that is necessary to give us the best.
But the information you're giving will also be part of agenda setting.
We are setting, if when you finish agenda, Juma, you have set your agenda. There are institutions. My friend, Lawa Hamza, looking very good and chubby, I'm sure he's been taking a lot of, was talking about
it's cold there.
INEC, I know. INEC, how the guideline of INEC comes from the law. It is drawn, it is not extraneous of whether the what do you call it, the Electoral Act or the Constitution. We must also be very careful in not legislating in a way that makes it difficult for institutions to have discretion. I know that discretion, where there is discretion, corruption, is rife. But I also know that if, for instance, there is a situation that is not covered by the law, it is the guideline that helps to resolve it. So it's a tricky balance in understanding the role of institutions. The Supreme Court and even the Court of Appeal can hide under technicalities. And technicalities is part of law. When you go to read law, read technicalities as well. So don't just say that it is that they've used technicality. Technicalities is ingrained in what you should study. So, but the point is that they can use technicalities and all of that. But the reality is that these guidelines help in the administration of elections. And it is also a power donated to INEC by the Constitution.
So what does it mean when legislators override what is perceived to be the public interest, public preference? Do legislators even consult their constituents?
There is no, that's where I have a problem. We don't have public hearings in the true sense. Insecurity had killed the idea of public hearing. Access to National Assembly is
restricted.
Is terribly restricted. And then they were home this holiday. Most of them were sharing rice and such other things. There were no meetings anywhere where citizens were asked. And then their constituency offices are not functional. And then most of them, their websites are permanently under construction. So you see that the ability to harness citizen views are restricted. And even when they do it in a way that those who can bring alternative voice are either sidelined from those meetings or not invited at all. So the missing link really is the mechanism for harvesting constituents' voices into lawmaking, which is, and then the treadmill of lawmaking itself is stunted by, like I said, insecurity, restrictions, and non-functional, even their own technology to be able to access them. And even the whole voice votes thing. I think we have shouted faith, our voice was about letting us know voted. I think National Assembly has that, what's that thing called? That they installed at the point that we were very excited about, where we can say, Juma voted this way, and then, but when it is a nay and yay, you can run, you can hide. Even when you said yay, when you said
you can claim the other.
You can come out to television and be claiming that
you said nay.
You didn't say so, because it's tricky. It's a very tricky situation.
It's a tricky situation, Madam Faith. How does this strengthen or weaken public trust in governance? in the legislatures themselves?
It has a lot to do because it actually weakens and doesn't strengthen public trust. And so people can have their own interpretation of whatever is happening. I was having a conversation this morning coming down here, and my colleague was telling me that some elites think that electronic transmission means electronic voting. So sometimes misinformation could actually crop up. So you are trying to tell somebody that electronic transmission means after the results have been declared at the polling unit, you need to, capture that, to grab it and then send it to a portal. And somebody say, no, it means that as soon as you vote, the thing is transmitted. So there's a lot that we need to let citizens know before they begin to distort the entire information. And once you have this, you distort information, it leads to mistrust. And so the National Assembly needs to do a lot more. Now, if you ask about this 10th Assembly, a lot of people tend to have more trust with the House of Representatives than the Senate itself. There was one time the House of Representatives did a town hall meeting, and this question that Eze raised now was something that I asked. I asked how many, if you want to take the statistics of members of the House of Representatives or the Senate that have constituency offices, can we have that data? Can we have also the data of consultations that the legislators have with their constituencies? Can we have that data? Now, a lot of legislators are hiding under insecurity. They don't even have a constituency, but they win elections. They go back, they win elections, they campaign. So how many times did you go back to consult your people? Some of them that claim that they have constituency offices, their constituency offices is just one store and a bench. A store and a bench with one big signboard that says this is the constituency office of so person. There is never any person there. Sometimes as soon as they win election, they just go and construct something, and in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, the place is already overgrown with weed. And you say that is your constituency office. So it is important that consultation, information helps to dispel a lot of mistrust. So if you are doing, because like Eze talked about, the power of the gavel is not stronger than the power of the people, because the people that put you there. Okay, so you have the power of the gavel. Let us wait for election. And he say the power of the ballot is stronger than any other power, but the interpretation of that power is what is still lacking amongst the people. Because if we have this kind of situation, every time we're having an electoral reform, there's always one controversy or the other, and it's always centered around the Senate. Now, if you look at also the Senate, and I'm beginning to feel that the Senate is now being designed as a retirement home for past governors. So very soon, perhaps there will be a change in law that says for you to qualify to be a senator, you must have been a past governor. So when we come back, we continue with that sense of having been governor for 4 years, for 8 years. We feel that same constituency is a constituency. It's a different ball game. Legislature and executive are different things. The legislature should not take a decision without consulting its constituency, except in cases of emergency. Or even in cases of emergency, your aides at your constituency office should feed you back. There was a time in Delta State, a member of the House of Assembly was suspended because he took the budget to his constituency to discuss. And they suspended him for doing that.
They have no executive decisions by the people.
So a budget, just like this electoral law, is the people. It is the people that should be at the center of it. It is what the people want that you should do. You don't always think about who is in the office and that. If you look at the processes of lawmaking in Nigeria, it's always about who is at the center. So 8 years maximum, the person leaves office, and we are now seeing that, there's a gap, we need to do this, we need to do that. But however, of all of this conversation, my fear really is this. 2 things. Election, by now we should have had a timetable for election. We don't have. So people are not preparing yet. Number 2, what is the guarantee that after all of these delays, we will get the assent that will make the electoral bill a law? These are my 2 fears. So what is the guarantee? Now we are having this delay. By now, at least the Electoral Act should have been amended like 2 years ago, so that we have, we experience it, we practice it, we look at the loopholes, the gaps, and help INEC to prepare for the general election. We have had opportunity of by-elections. The by-election is going to happen, and the FCC election next Saturday. The other elections are coming. Are we still going to use this new Electoral Act when it comes out just few months to the general election? So these are the concerns actually we should be looking at, and these are the things that breed mistrust, with especially with the legislature.
All right, let me get back to Hamzat Lawal. I'm sure you're listening to Fetwa Dishi and taking her fears into cognizance. I hope you are going to allay her fears. But I'd like to ask, there are many countries that now require, you know, that automatic, real-time electronic transmission of results. Why exactly does it matter? Let's get back to the basics.
I think first it matters because it helps strengthen the electoral processes and ensure transparency and accountability, and takes away that whole notion or perception of rigging. And you see, this whole thing is about also, so when you look at it, it's about ensuring that whoever the people have given their mandate, no one can question it. So we've observed election in Kenya. I'm using Kenya as a case study because, you know, their process is similar to ours, where they also use beavers, but they have a name they call their own machine. And they're also now transmitting their result electronically. Also, the last election in the US, because you would see the red and the blue pop-up that represent the two major political parties, and these are results trickling down in real time. This breeds confidence, and you see, Nigeria is a country that sadly there's mistrust, and in a society, the most important ingredient, even in a democracy, is trust. And if citizens do not trust institution and the process that this institution are trunking out, so the barest minimum we should advocate for is to ensure that you know, we rebuild back that trust. And you see, the electoral amendment process can help the Nigerian people, can even help government at every quarter to help rebuilding back this trust. And this is why this process is very, very important. Again, it talks about the issue of legitimacy, because you see, if you have an electoral process that is flawless, nobody would question the legitimacy of the elected official, or even the process itself. And we, you know, I hope and I pray that we get to a point where we don't have to seek judicial redress after an election. Because you see, when you have an election that is flawless, that is transparent, that is accountable, you know, people who lose would naturally just accept defeat and not go and seek redress. And this is where we want to go to. And the only way we can get there is through our electoral amendment process. And like I said before, we're not there yet, but we're not where we used to be. We've seen over the years that we've continued to strengthen this process, and we're taking lessons from election circle through the you know, the judicial process and some of the outcome to then approach the National Assembly and make demands, you know, taking these lessons and experiences. And hopefully, you know, we're now aware that there will be an emergency sitting on Tuesday, and hopefully, you know, these issues will be addressed. And I think before I yield the mic is, we already have an electronic voting system in the National Assembly. My worry is, why are we not using it? Why do we have to always set aside, you know, processes that does not conform with our biases? Because you see, today now, we really cannot tell who voted yea or nay on this very critical amendment. And I think this is where constituents can hold their legislators accountable, because people there are representing various constituents. And if their constituents are saying, we want electronic transmission of results, and you vote against it, there is no way for us to checkmate it, because again, the principles of democracy is checks and balance. And, you know, as legislators, the people who are representing various constituents on their behalf should be able to hold you to account.
I'm still going to stay with you. You know, it's all about the people, actually. And some of them have already sent us questions. We also expect more questions from our viewers. I'm going to take some of them so that you can respond before we come back to the studio here. One of them said, okay, Chukwu Okori said, good morning, Nigerians. My contribution is a question. Please, does INEC have the technological capability for real-time transmission of electoral results? Are we looking Or are we looking for electoral crisis? That's from Okechukwu Okweri. And from Mohammed Awal Musa Afame from Kano, he said the Nigerian Senate recently passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026. They have not passed it yet, but it rejected a proposal to make real-time electronic transmission of results mandatory, opting instead to give INEC the discretion to choose the method, considering the threat of mass action from the Nigeria Labour Congress and concerns from civil society. How does this discretionary approach affect the confidence of rural voters in the transparency of the 2027 election? And what role should community leaders play in advocating for clearer electoral safeguards? Said good morning. And Akeju Olabanju said the focus on part of the electoral amendment on electronic transmission is anchored on real-time delivery, and there should be no attempt to remove the word real-time. Otherwise, we'll continue to empower judiciary to determine the outcome of the elections. And Omoge Peter said electronic transmission and collation of results is the best for Nigeria for now, to avoid irregularities and numerous unnecessary court litigation after election. The National Assembly should pass electronic transmission and collation of results without delay. So can you respond to some of them before we come back to the studio, Hamza?
Yes, I'll take the first question, and who talked about do we have the technological capability? There is no place in Nigeria today where you don't have network penetration, particularly even mobile, and that's voice and data. And this is also an opportunity for NCC to work with our service providers to also expand, far-reaching network infrastructure, which would create jobs and create more opportunity. And mind you, this is also about integration and ensuring that we're leaving no one behind. So yes, Nigeria has, the network reach to deploy electronic transmission of results, and technology means that is needed in our electoral process. Again, it's an opportunity for more investment. It's an opportunity to continue to integrate and ensuring that we leave no one behind. And I agree with other viewers that have also put in their submission that it's non-negotiable. Electronic transmission of results is here to stay, and this would help to continue to build up on our various advocacy from years of experience in electoral management processes.
Right, Hamzat Lawa, thank you very much. I don't know if anyone would like to take a shot at one of the contributions.
Well, I think there is some consensus around the fact that we do need electronic transmission and collation. That's where I.
Okay.
That's where I.
And collation.
Yeah, because Madam Faith called it the silver bullet.
You see, because if you have been around, you know, if you upload this thing into, if you take this PDF and put into IREV, except there is a dispute, nobody goes to the IREV. The IREV is not that when you finish in the polling unit that the returning officer must align the result he has with what is in IREV. Somebody has to say what you are computing or what you are adding up here does not align with what my party agent brought for me. And then you show. And then he says, okay, let us now check what is in IREV. And the extant law says when you check, what is in IREV will be upheld. So without disputation, there is no, the IREV is not called to question. So I've been saying, I don't understand the technology, but my simple English would tell me that once you put collation, you cover the field. Real-timeness must be nuanced. Real-timeness must be nuanced. Otherwise, you create opportunity for another crisis. And when I started, I said, I have seen us push a reform that eventually puts us into more trouble. Let us have clearly the statistics for internet penetration. As at December, it was 53 or so % internet penetration. And I do know that this 50, that is about 109 million subscribers. And my common sense tells me that that will be in urban areas. And even in the urban area, even voice that we talk about and SMS and even WhatsApp, there are times that we see that you can send message even in Abuja, and it will not go for 2 days. Yes. It will take a lot of time.
All right.
So, sorry, sir. Victor, I am saying let INEC leverage existing, facilities, technological facilities, and be transparent about where you have penetration, and put it out that we are able to do real time in these locations, and will not be able to do real time
in these
locations ahead of time. But I want to quickly touch where Faith left it. You create emergency so that you can use discretion. It's deliberate to create emergency. So we are not going to understand what they passed. When they eventually pass it, there will be misapplication, because both the judge and the advocates are all in a rush to understand what was eventually passed. So sometimes the intentionality of also using our backwardness as excuse, and our backwardness is a function of their own lack of interest in developing the country. Because I don't see the reason why a minister of communication cannot connect the 774 local governments. I can't understand. I know that last year there was some money that was put out to be able to do that. So we create these emergencies, we use under development. Victor, your election cannot be better than your infrastructure. All the English that we are speaking, once you don't have the proportionate infrastructure for to back up technology and your electoral integrity designs, for me, you are just... So, are we that developed? Somebody asked that question. Do we have the capacity? Does INEC have the capacity? It can have the capacity in some places, it may not have. When I was in the village for Christmas, there are... And my village is not so much it's not that a backward community. For 2 days, you can call me on certain networks. You will not even get me. And even when you get me, there are particular places in my house where I have to be
to receive call.
And those who make the argument that penetration is everywhere, I don't know how much of Nigeria they know.
All right.
I really don't know how much of Nigeria.
All right.
They know.
I think that what you are saying aligns with this message I'm about to read from Annie in Rivers State. Now, he says, electronic transmission of results is not impossible, but getting it right on implementing it is the challenge. We cannot be arguing this 11 months to national elections. Such an ambitious project should be tested at a lower and less important election, maybe at party levels, organizational levels, before using it for national elections. Have we asked the opinions of tech experts? It is not as straightforward and smooth as Nigerians are discussing it. Note, if the National Assembly confirms electronic transmission as mandatory, with the level of telecoms development in Nigeria, there will be so much invalidated votes at the end of the day, resulting in a lot of confusion. Or do Nigerians feel real transmission is immune to manipulation? Securing the data is another big project within the project. That's from Annie in Rivers State. And from Aliu Mohammed here in Abuja, he says, I would like to advise that the political parties stop fielding candidates with questionable issues, court or with EFCC and ICPC to curb corruption in the land. From Ahmed Babadikwa in Maiduguri, the craftsman analogy indeed fails. Systems are not passive tools, but procedural constructs. Legislators are right to reject ambiguous provisions that could transform technicalities into weapons against electoral integrity. Now, the focus must remain on closing loopholes, not creating legal traps for future contests. Now, from Sunday, we hear it says, Hamza did not understand the question. Okay, I think we were talking about that. Who benefits from the ambiguity? And finally, from Ibodo Ofulue, it says, good morning, NTA. The razzmatazz about e-transmission of results is a deliberate design by the Senate to subvert honest votes. We, the people, must be respected by our representatives by implementing our just opinions. Faith.
I agree with the last, person who wrote that text, but that's what we've been saying here. That the representatives must always respect the thoughts of their constituencies. Yeah. So it's important, all of those things that they said. For instance, the first person that wrote from Rivers talked about the infrastructure, and that's what we are saying here. And when Ezenwa talked about INEC coming to say this is where we should, I think that question should be thrown to NCC. It is NCC, the National Communications Commission, that should work together with INEC and give us that data. What is the level of penetration that we have, and where do we have it? And you hear people talk about 2G, 3G, and then there's this so much clamor for 5G. Now we are using 5G. Meanwhile, in some areas you cannot have 2G. So, for instance, the result transmission can be designed in such a way that it uses 2G. Majority of the areas in Nigeria already have 2G penetration. So, if you have 2G penetration and you can use that to send your results, it can actually work. But the most important thing is for the agencies to sit down and have a conversation about this. You need to be able to give out the right information, because you don't want, Nigerians are all experts everywhere. So we are talking about 2G and 3G now. There's somebody in the village that can come and tell you something much higher than what you know, without even consulting the experts in the industry. And that's why you have a lot of misinformation and misconception about what the issue really is. So it's important that we do that. And also like the idea that when these laws are coming up, for instance, if we had this law 2 years ago, we would have been able to have tested it, even tested it as soon as the general election finished, and then the off-cycle election, and you're sure that you are ready for the next election. Now, we were celebrating the fact that we had come to a situation in Nigeria where the election that will happen in the next 30 years, we know the date. Now, we are no longer sure. If this law passes, it means that we have taken a step back. Because we wouldn't know when exactly the next election is coming. Because if the next election would have been somewhere in February next year, by this time the election timetable would have come out and would have started preparing. Now, with what we are having right now, if this law doesn't pass, it means that we would have gone back on what is in the Electoral Act and will not have been able to meet that. So you see the kind of gaps and issues that they are creating for us. It's important. Yes, a lot of uncertainties that we need to take.
Okay, we'll continue this conversation right after this break. Don't go away. Indeed, we have to believe in our country. And before we get to Hamza, I have some messages too that came in. Let me read them so that Hamza can respond to some of them and the ones we read earlier. He said, good morning, Nigeria. Many thanks to NTA for today's topic of discussion. We have to tread softly with the amendment of electoral laws. Do we have all the necessary infrastructures, technical know-how, expertise, electorates, education, and above, societal reorientation in place at the moment to make the live transmission of election results effectively and efficiently? He said definitely no. Don't rush the amendment to prevent more confusion and chaos, instability in the country. May God bless Nigeria, from Kayode Busari from Lagos. And another one said, electronic transmission and collation of results is what Nigerians desire. The word real-time is used because it is done electronically. So what is done electronically and will produce results in real time? Your business is to pass the law and INEC is to do the needful. Hamza, as you respond to some of these, and we also look at the powers of INEC, are their hands tied here?
No, I don't think their hands are tied. I'm sure if you speak to people within the institution, they would want a process that is more strengthening for them and makes, their logistical nightmare seamless. Because again, when you look at elections, and from our experience, logistics is usually the nightmare. And when you also look at electronic transmission of results, it also has to do with technological logistics. But that being said, you see there's an opportunity here. Before now, when you look at the banking sector, you make a transfer or you even go into the bank and you deposit money. Sometimes it takes 1 week in the past. But today, you're just initiating a transfer. As soon as it confirms, the person on the other side gets the money. That was the process. It took time to get it where it is today. And I see this opportunity has also presented itself, because when you have the law, what it does is it now breeds room for investors, for new innovation, for new solution-driven thinking, and then explore how we can, again, it's about integration, it's about inclusion. What this also would help us to do is to bring more penetration across Nigeria, where you have both voice and data access. And yes, NCC, the Ministry of Information and Digital Economy, can work closely with INEC once this law is passed and ensure we can then work with service providers and get the necessary investors to ensure we have the solution-driven technology that integrates into INEC. And when we go into elections, we don't have to worry about downtime of electronic transmission of results. You see, during election, it is during coalition that elections are being manipulated. And that's why this process or this new call is important. Because once you are able to transfer this result to IREV and citizens can access it, then to manipulate election becomes much more difficult. And the people who benefit from this, and tying this to your previous question, the people who benefit from all of this chaos are the mischief makers and politicians that don't want us to progress, not the people. So, but once we're able to pass this amendment and get Mr. President to assent to it, and I'm confident that Mr. President would assent to it once it's passed by law, because there is a clear indication that the Nigerian people want electronic transmission of results. And again, people who are going to run in 2027 have this confidence that, they have it in the bag, they're going to win the election. So why worry? Just pass it. If you're confident that you're going to win elections, then pass all the electoral amendments into law and, have your day with the electorate. So victory can be declared upon you, because if you say that you have confidence that you win, then you should not be threatened with this process. Rather, you should embrace it and see it as a in-way to your victory.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. We'll get back to you. Let me come back to the studio with Ezenwa. And I'm wondering the place of the civil society in all of this. How are CSOs going to push for these democratic reforms? You've talked about what will count or what will work, transmission of results and collation. What is the CSO doing about this?
Victor, in this studio, I've always told you that the civil society has become the head with which coconut is broken. For people to... as far as we create these cults, we take away the conversation from being a people's conversation. The arrogance that civil society is omniscient, knows everything. And you know that civil society is not... There are people who are working on health, working on aviation.
You belong to the Partners for Electoral Reform.
No, what I'm saying
is in your court.
I hope you know that we submitted memorandum to the National Assembly. We did town halls in at least 30 states. My organization, physically, I'm not talking about sending people. I was physically in at least 30 states conducting town halls and harvesting And the memorandum was submitted to the National Assembly and INEC as well. So this, and then at some point, we are going to put boots on the ground as well to push for what we want. But I always tell you that I started with the limits of advocacy, and Juma asked me, what does that mean? What it means is that no matter how much we try, except the people themselves own a struggle. Do you understand what I'm saying? If they own it, then it is easy to push. If somebody comes from Katsina and says he doesn't want electronic transmission, another person comes from Borno, the other one comes from Ebui. I mean, the people themselves in their organizations say they don't want e-transmission. No matter what I want or what CSO wants, the prevailing will be the what will be carried. So we will do our best, we will push the most we can, but don't make it our thing. And Nigerian people have a way of outsourcing these things to some select people who they have made, you know, their voice. Democracy did not contemplate that a few people will be speaking on a matter. Democracy will be the unleashing of voices in a way that it percolates and makes sense to be able to shift policy. We can reignite the conversation, we can push the way we like, but it is still the responsibility of the people. And every time when I make this argument, people say, oh, you know, then what is the value of civil society? I said, under the military, we created that space where we pushed, paid price. Okay, but democracy means that there are different processes. Hamza talked about holding the senators accountable from your constituency. What are you telling them right now? I know there are organizations, civil society organizations, that have put the numbers of members of the different committees out there in public for citizens to call. The question will be, how many people are calling? How many people are talking to their... When we meet our constituents, what do our House of members and senators, what do we tell them? Our children's school fees have not been paid.
Somebody is sick in the hospital. You need
I'm getting married.
I'm getting married. My wife has a baby.
We confuse their role. Yeah. And so they are excited when they come and create that Baba Kekede situation in their environment. And everybody comes sitting on the floor, you know, and then he's, you know, talking and everybody is listening. There is no place for say, Oga, this is what we want as a people. No matter how much you try, you cannot be more farmer than a farmer. You can't understand farming more than somebody who is farming. The Nigerian farmer knows when to plant, when not to plant, when to wait. So if you are Minister of Agri or Minister of anything, you can't know more than that.
If you are not a farmer.
If you are not a farmer. So the disconnect is what we have talked about. Until we rechannel the way to harvest people's feelings and make it, when an issue comes, don't make it civil society conversation. Let it be a Nigerian, pan-Nigerian conversation.
A pan-Nigerian
conversation.
Okay, I have one more message before I get to Faith. He said, Sam Praise from Abuja said, my opinion is that let the Senate include real-time electronic collation results in the Electoral Reform Act to reduce evil act by politicians. Also, I don't think network would be a problem. Let the Senate pass the real-time results into law first. That's coming from Sam Praise Abuja. And then, Madam Faith, every election year we see how much money is pumped into INEC, you know, in billions, and training and retraining of INEC staff or an ad hoc, you know, staff to do that. Are we well equipped for electronic transmission of results? Is INEC having enough staff to drive this? And one other thing is, what does this mean, you know, for 2027 elections in real-time impact on Nigerians' elections?
Okay, so let me give some information about when we talk about real time. Real time, when you send something electronically, there's a timestamp.
Yes.
That shows exactly the time that you sent that. So some conversations around real time also refers to that. People want to see at what time these results were sent. So that's how it makes sense to say that this result was sent on election day. Election ends at 2:30 or whatever time it ended at that polling unit. And as soon as the election is ended, you have done all of your collation, you have, disaggregated the results, and then you snap and send. At the time you send, there's always a timestamp and date exactly on that information that you send. So people can also use that for...
So there's no fear of rigging after?
So you are able to say this result was sent after, maybe you can give a space of 30 minutes, because you have to count. You have to count. You now have to disaggregate the results. You need to put the results according to the political parties that people voted and all of that. The party agents, security, you sort them out. Then after sorting, you begin to count. After counting, you assign the vote. So it takes some period. It's not like you just finish voting and the result is
sent. It's not a text message.
It's not. Yes, it's not a text message. So it's a process. So from the time of voting until the time it ends, because the law says once you have the person, the last person by 2:30 at the back, the person must vote. So even if you have 5,000 persons on the line, an election is closing at 2:30, you don't say people go home. People who are already on the line will continue to vote until the last person votes, and then collation is done, sorting is done, and results are signed. The results sheet is signed, party agents, the presiding officer. That's when the election actually ends. Then you take that paper that has been signed by everybody, you snap it and send. So we have to be careful about what we are saying. It's not like, you are voted, and then you say election has ended, then you begin to look for result by 2:30. No, results cannot come by 2:30 because they have to finish. So the other thing is INEC's capacity staff. The whole reason why INEC contract ad hoc staff is because they don't have enough staff. They don't have all of the infrastructure that they need to do that. And I keep saying, once an election is around the corner, INEC becomes everything. INEC becomes a generator of energy, because the centers that they send their people to, they have to put generators there to bring electricity. They need to go to secondary schools where the people will be camped. They take mattresses there. They become waterboard. They put tanks there and ensure that they give. And these things are things that the state governors or the state government should ordinarily have prepared before the election. But you now have an INEC that has to do all of that. Imagine going with mats, with buckets, with mattresses for people, including the security agents that come to those places to stay. So the last Ondo election, we went to one of the RAC centers. It was an old town hall, There are no windows, nothing. And then you have people there, children, couples who should sleep there. So you're looking at all of that money that is given to INEC. This is some of the things that they have to do with it. Imagine if that local government had provided a conducive place. For instance, a school. A public school with boarding house facilities, and you have everything in place. They don't need to go to buy all of that. But you go to that public school that is supposed to be a boarding house, there are no mattresses. There's nothing, there's no electricity there. So INEC has to provide all of that. So those are some of the challenges that you look at. And when you talk about the funding and the budget for INEC, some of those also go into that. And
is the budget enough with all these things you've said? Is the budget enough for them, for INEC? So
sometimes you find that there is a gap, because now we are going to look at a new electoral law that will come in. If they have trained people, they will have to go back and retrain people, so that they will understand the Electoral Act. They will have to also train the security agents. You know, you go to the field, you have different players on the field. They train security agents. Civil society train the people that they are deploying to the field to observe election. So training and retraining, and I'm sure also they also do some training for media people on the law. So you find out that looking at the population that we have, and you want to do an analysis, what you need to do is divide the population of voters and all of that they have to do with the amount of money and find out how much they are spending per voter. That's what will help to determine if the money is enough or not.
Thank you, Faith Wadishi. I have two messages that have come in before I get back to Hamzat. Now, good morning, discussants. Yes, electronic transmission may be good in practice. With the present rate of cyber crimes, would human corruption strategy not affect electronic transmission? This is from Obi Charles Abiagom in Aniocha, north of Delta State. Now, the other one is from Benjamin Egu in Ebonyi. I think it will be a good thing to take things slowly. Nigeria is a complex country. There are places with no network access, so there is no way we can have trustworthy results if the infrastructure problems remain. And to get back to Hamzat Lawal.
Can I read this before we go to Hamzat? Yes, because of time. Okay. And Samuel Adamu Joshua is sending in from Lagos. He said, good morning, Nigeria, NTA, and good morning, Nigerians. Today's discussion is very important, and I appreciate NTA for consistently creating a platform that keeps citizens informed and engaged. May your efforts to promote national dialogue continue to grow stronger. Amen. One of the major challenges we face as a country is the lack of firm political will. We often know the right steps to take, especially regarding our electoral laws. Yet, we continue to hear excuses that do not reflect the realities on ground. For example, some communities are said to have poor network coverage, yet people in these same areas are able to make calls and carry out financial transactions using POS services. This raises a simple question: how many communities truly lack any form of connectivity? With the level of technology available today, government can deploy reliable systems that allow election results to be transmitted in real time. When there is genuine commitment to protecting our democracy, practical solutions can also be implemented. If we truly want credible elections and stronger democratic institutions, then we must be ready to do what is right and necessary. God bless NTA, God bless Nigeria.
All right, let me get back to Hamzat Lawal. Does Nigeria risk falling behind global electoral best practices if we fail to take these steps?
Yes, and the reality is Nigeria always plays catch up, which is really sad. We seem to continue and consistently play catch up. And, this is not different with even our electoral process or system itself. So this would help us not only play catch-up, but also put us ahead of, other society and other country, where people can come and learn from us if we're able to pass the Electoral Act Amendment, particularly around our real-time results transmission. So, and I think that it's also a moment of reflection as a country. How do we, and I agree, there's this thought, I think it was Ezenwa that said it, we cannot have a system that is better than our infrastructure. Just come to think of it. And when you talk about even infrastructure, we're not just talking about, what you see on the ground, but it also talks about our capacity, our systems, our process, holistically. And, Faith even alluded to something also very important. Some of this service delivery, because it's tied to service delivery, why don't we have them at local level? What is so grand about them that we don't even have the barest minimum? Primary school, access to potable drinking water. And then you leave INEC. And you see, and from all of this conversation, you just even have to pity INEC as an institution. Because during election, they are literally providing every single thing that different arms of government are supposed to provide. So again, yes, we always play catch up. I hope that we're able to get it right. Hopefully the electoral amendment process would help us to rethink and reflect and take the needed action. And this does not only have to do with leadership. This has to also do with followership. So you and I, must make those difficult decisions that helps our society becomes better.
Do you mind?
Everyone, in just 30 seconds, your final thoughts. Which way forward?
Okay, I think that there is also some diversionary interest in focusing on electoral reform without focusing on political reform. The leadership recruitment process that we have in our country, the transactional and diabolical nature of becoming a candidate makes it difficult for reforms, electoral reforms to take place. If I am in debt through banks, I sold my property to become a candidate of a political party.
Why? Why did you sell it? Who asked you to sell?
The delegates are bribed. And I'm not saying anything I invented. You've watched from your studio here party primaries of political parties held in broad daylight, and you see EFCC roving. What is the business of EFCC? Roving party primaries to catch people who are doing what? Who are bribing delegates. So you have to bribe delegates in most of the dominant political parties. You have taken away contests. When people can't contest for positions, they have to bribe their way to it. They become desperate to study how to subvert your innovations.
All right.
And I think we have to pay attention
to that
in our further conversations.
Madam Faith, 30 seconds.
So I just want to say that there is power in the ballots, and the people must realize that the power lies with them. So it has to be the people's conversation without really misinforming, but focusing on what the issue is and putting pressure on our representatives.
Indeed, I believe there will be more conversations on this electoral before it is passed and, assented by Mr. President. I will be here to break it down for our viewers to understand it all. So let me thank you first, Faith Nwadishi. She's Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you for having me.
We love you. I hope you'll soon be back so that we can break down some of the things. Ezenwa Wago, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform and Convener, Say No to Campaign Nigeria. Thank you for coming, as always. Varying, opinions there, but I tend to understand that you people are understanding each other today. There's no varying. And okay, Hamzat Lawal, Chevenix scholar, Master student, Institute of Development Studies, University of Sussex, United Kingdom, and founder, Connected Development. Has always been a pleasure having you on the program. We hope to have more of you as we continue this conversation. Hamza.
Thank you for having me.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you for your time. I am Jumoy Yesuf.
Right, and I'm Victor Azu. Of course, we'll be paying close attention to tomorrow's plenary of the Senate and the joint committee engagements. We'll be right back. I'm Victor Azu again. Bye for now.